2024 was a dodgy year in gaming, with releases as low as Suicide Squad to games as acclaimed as Metaphor ReFantazio. However, this year I primarily went into the backlog and played some truly great games despite all the negativity going around in the medium this year. So without wasting any more time, let's get into the games I beat in 2024. Kickstarting 2024, I finally got around to beating the second game in the Batman Arkham series, Batman Arkham City. Going in, I expected a lot, as this is the game in the series with the highest praise, and in many ways, it did not disappoint. The all-new open world map is a delight and finally gave me an environment to properly utilize the gliding mechanics. The combat is a step up from Arkham Asylum and just feels smoother overall. And the boss fights are a standout here too. A great step up from Asylum, especially with the Mr. Freeze boss fight. Quite possibly my favorite boss fight of the whole year. Although I'm gonna have to nitpick, I think the narrative is a little overrated. As a whole, it's great with a jaw-dropping finish that leaves you wanting more, and there's some genuinely amazing subtle foreshadowing, but you're telling me the sole reason for the Catwoman missions is to save Batman at the end and literally nothing else? Like, is it really that big of a deal? No, but she should have been implemented so much better into the story. I do not want to give the impression I think it's a bad story. It's really amazing, but I think some of you guys are overhyping it just a little bit. Arkham City's crazy ending didn't make me want to wait very long to play Arkham Knight, so you won't have to wait very long to hear my thoughts on the controversial finale. As the month switched to February and the expiration of my Game Pass was on the horizon, I decided it was time to give a first-party Xbox game a try, and I chose Hi-Fi Rush. Oh, well, at least the studio got bought out, so they're okay, but so much for diving into Xbox's first-party offerings. I have never played a game quite like Hi-Fi Rush, probably because I don't really play rhythm games, but even if I did, I could probably still say the same thing. This game mashes together the thrilling combo chaining action genre with the satisfying rhythm game genre. It was many people's game of the year in 2023, and I can definitely see why. For me personally, it doesn't clear Spider-Man 2 though, because bias, and that's about it. That being said, I had an absolute blast with this game. The characters are fun, and the gameplay is even more fun. The art style and animation has a super comic booky vibe, and it gives the game a ton of flair. I'm beyond glad to see the future of Tango is looking bright, and that we likely are going to see Hi-Fi Rush turn into a franchise of its own. Games like these are what the industry needs. Hell, Xbox said it themselves right after shutting them down. Told you it wouldn't be long. March was the month I beat the conclusion of the Arkham trilogy, Batman Arkham Knight. This is pretty notoriously divisive for many people, the biggest reason of all being the Batmobile, so I'm just going to address that right away since it's probably the most drastic change from the prior games. People don't like how repetitive and boring the tank fights are, and I get it, especially towards the end of the game, I was kinda getting sick of them. But for the majority of the game, I found the car to be an absolute blast to just drive around the city with. It was exhilarating, really. I personally don't really mind the tank combat. I think it's alright, but nothing special, and I can't remember really feeling any annoyance for it until the end of the game. As for everything else about the game, the graphics are absolutely gorgeous, especially for 2015. It looks just as good as any game coming out today, nearly 10 years later. The combat is even smoother and fun than it was in City, which was already almost perfect. And this game contains my favorite narrative in the Arkham series I've played so far, even if it is a little bit flawed. I love what they do with the Joker specifically in this game. It's such a clever and unique way to keep him at the core of this game's story. Scarecrow was a perfect villain choice for this task, and he's so much better here than he is in Arkham Asylum, even if it's a little unbelievable the jump in personality, but that's just kind of nitpicking. Arkham Knight is easily my favorite game I've played so far in this series, but I still haven't played Arkham Origins yet, so who knows, it may be topped. Not gonna lie, April was an absolute cop-out month when I beat Buckshot Roulette. I watched my friend play it before it was released on Steam, and that taught me basically how to play it. The game is a mix of strategy and luck where you try to shoot the opponent to get them to run out of lives, but the real battle is determining when you have a blank or live round up next. Once double or nothing mode is unlocked is when the game gets even more replayable. It's tougher and introduces many new items. It's far from the most deep game in the world, but it's got some great fun to be had, especially for the low price it's offered at. Later in the year, they even added a multiplayer mode, which has given the game a much needed boost in replayability that I've kept going back to in recent months. I definitely recommend this one, as it's pretty easy to pick up and learn, as well as being rather cheap. Do you guys remember when in the Games I Beat in 2023 video, I was hyping up Hellblade and was talking about how excited I was for the sequel? Well, May was the month Senua's Saga Hellblade 2 released, so I wasted no time and made sure I played it as soon as I could. And, yeah, it was alright. Now, a part of this could just be all the negative opinions online circulating at the time that this game had, and maybe that subconsciously influenced my opinion, but man, this game just came and went for me. In contrast, when I beat the first Hellblade last year, I considered it a masterpiece 10 out of 10, and while I lean more towards a 9 out of 10 nowadays, the game connected with me very well and had a lot of personal staying power. Hellblade 2 does a lot right. We're introduced to new characters, fights are insanely cinematic and badass, and the visuals are easily the best I've seen from any video game I've ever played. But there's one problem I have with the game. The actual length of it. Not because I think they're charging too much for the length like idiots on Twitter were saying. That was seriously the most brain-dead shit I've ever heard. See, the first game worked with a short runtime since they weren't trying to tell the stories of multiple characters, it was solely about Senua's battles with her innermost darkness. Whereas, take this game, we're introduced to I think 3 more characters who didn't really feel very developed, and neither did I grow any attachment to any of them. Hell, I don't even remember their names. Also, this could just be me, but I feel like the battles were way easier this time around, but I don't know for sure. That could just be me not sucking anymore. I know I'm shitting on this game a lot, but I really did enjoy the game. I just wish it was longer so I could truly fall in love with it, and it had the time it needed to develop all of its characters and storylines. In June, I decided it was time to replay 9 Hours, 9 Persons, 9 Doors, or 999 for short. One of my top 5 games of all time. As I discussed in my video talking about games I wish I could replay that nobody watched, I wound up skipping past much of the dialogue since I knew when they were dropping exposition and when shit was getting real. It didn't tarnish my love for the game at all. If anything, it reminded me what makes the reveals so incredible. I've said it before and I'll say it again, if you like visual novels or especially Danganronpa, you have to give this game a try. Hell, it's literally made by the same people. Maybe now that I've played this game 2 whole times now, just maybe it might be time to finally play the sequel. The first game I beat in July was a game I started all the way back in 2020 and finally beat now 4 years later. The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening. This was my first Zelda game and one that shouldn't have taken me nearly as long to beat as it did. This is a remake of a Game Boy game, and they translate it well on Switch by modernizing it just enough that you can tell it's the same game, but also makes it feel better to play than the Game Boy game. Probably. I don't know, I never played it. The whole journey is pretty fun, but there are points in this game where I genuinely don't know how you're supposed to figure out where to go without a guide, which I personally don't have an ounce of shame for using at points. Movement and combat can feel a bit clunky with the 8-directional movement you're locked to, but I do get it for the sake of preservation of the classic game. Well, maybe now that I've had Breath of the Wild for 2 years, it might finally be time to start my next Zelda journey. The other game I beat this month was Metroid Prime Remastered. You can make an argument that this continues a trend of sorts of me beating games that took me a while to beat, but this one really only took me 7 months, so it's a little more debatable. Metroid Prime is one of the most highly acclaimed games of all time, and I can definitely see why. Transforming Metroid from 2D to 3D must have been a challenge, but they pulled it off in spades, as this level design is stellar. It's not easy to make a Metroidvania in 3D, but they pulled it off incredibly well. Just like the 2D games, you start off weak and get progressively stronger by unlocking more upgrades, granting you access to more areas on the map. And it feels amazing each and every time you get a new upgrade. There is a lot of lore for the Metroid series dumped into these games, but I never actually looked into it too much. I really only played for the gameplay. This game is absolutely brilliant, but the only thing that holds us back from being a 10 for me really is that I just didn't really get attached to this game at all. Don't get me wrong, I think it's amazing, but sentimentality is very important for me with video games. But it is definitely worth a try though, since it's clicked with so many people. Kickstarting August with the first of many games I beat this month was the Henry Stickmin Collection. Technically, this game also continues the trend of beating games I started a long time ago, since I started this game at the start of 2023 but put it on hold as I figured it would make a great cop-out game. However, as time passed, I started playing it again on my laptop while watching shows and YouTube on my PC. I had never played these games for myself, but I did watch them on YouTube back when the collection first came out in 2020. And yeah, this game is pretty neat. It's pretty fun to see every outcome, and it's also simple fun to try and collect all the achievements for the game. The real highlight though has to be all the reference to pop culture throughout the years. Despite being just a grouping of flash games, they always succeed in making engaging scenarios. Henry Stickmin isn't anything incredible, but what it does deliver is a super enjoyable little experience. The second of 3 games I beat in August is none other than Persona 5 Royal, which without a doubt continues the trend that started with Link's Awakening of me beating games I started a long time ago. I started playing back in October 2022 when the game was first added on Game Pass, and the game quickly had me addicted. For whatever reason, most games fail to keep me interested in playing for longer than an hour or 2 at a time, but that was never the case with Persona. There were several times where I'd play Persona all day long. The reason it took me so long to beat was due to me losing Game Pass, and by the time I got it back, it was taken off the service, forcing me to buy it, so I then waited for a discount to do so. But honestly, I don't regret how long I took with this game. I think it allowed it to have a much larger lasting impact on me. I love these characters and this story. It's not perfect, but due to how well it works at making me feel sentimentally attached to it, I am confident in saying that this is a 10 out of 10, and now my 3rd favorite game of all time. Now that I'm done yapping about the sentimental bullshit, we can talk about what you've probably heard endless praise for already. This game's got serious style. All the menus are beaming with personality, and it's just a treat, man. The combat is addicting and has raised the bar for me in what I like to see in turn-based combat. And of course, the absolutely phenomenal soundtrack, quite possibly my favorite soundtrack in any game ever. But it's tough competition between this, Three Houses, and Undertale. Regardless, I adore Persona 5 Royal, and I can promise you I'll look back fondly on these times just because of this absolute masterpiece. With the Apollo Justice Collection releasing in February, it was finally time to continue one of, if not my favorite franchise of all time, with Apollo Justice Ace Attorney. This is a divisive one. It's kinda hard to talk about this one without getting into spoilers, but I'll do my best. This game takes place 7 years after the end of Trials and Tribulations, and a lot has changed. In typical Ace Attorney fashion, the characters are on point. The main cast especially is a highlight. As for the cases, the game opens up with a truly great case in Turnabout Trump, where we are introduced to this game's overarching story, an aspect of the great Ace Attorney games I like a lot. Then that transitions into an okay second case with Turnabout Corner. A lot of small things kind of bothered me, like how they kept liking to bring up a 15-year-old girl's underwear. a lot. It's literally a part of the case. From there, we go into Turnabout Serenade, which is probably the second worst case I've ever had to sit through, only behind Big Top. The logic for why they accuse the defendant literally makes zero sense, and they force you to watch the same clip of the concert a billion times, and it gets really annoying. The game rounds out with Turnabout Succession, which is a solid case, but it's definitely the least best of the finale cases I've played so far. I think it rounds out the game's overarching story well, but it makes a lot of odd choices that sometimes work and sometimes don't. Overall, I think it's another good Ace Attorney entry, but definitely my least favorite. September saw the release of Astro Bot, which won Game of the Year, baby! Let's go Astro Bot sweep! Astro Bot is a triumph in an industry full of corporate garbage that shows that games can still be full of passion and packed with fun. This game is endlessly fun, contains brilliant level design, well-hidden secrets, excellently executed power-ups and gimmicks, and as a cherry on top, it honors the history and legacy of the PlayStation brand. By the way, I totally called it in the 2023 video when I said I wanted a full game of Astro's Playroom. That's exactly what we got, and it's exactly what I wanted. This game really made me want to get back into first-party PlayStation games, since, as you may have noticed, I took quite a big break from this year. However, we won't have to wait too long to hear about another first-party PlayStation game. Even October seems to continue the overarching trend of this year, as after 3 years, I finally beat Getting Over It. I had stopped playing the game around early 2022, but this month I reinstalled it pretty much on a whim, and despite having to restart, I beat it all in 3 sittings. I don't really have an interest in rage games, but there's something about this one that stuck with me. It could be as simple as watching Markiplier lose his shit over this game years ago, or it's as simple as it's taken me forever to actually beat it. Regardless, I really enjoy this game, and think if you're looking for a different type of game, or some sort of challenge, and you've never given this game a go, try it. It can be a very frustrating pain in the ass, but conquering it has to have been one of the most satisfying moments from the whole year for me. Just like last year, in November I beat a Ratchet and Clank game, this time being Rift Apart. It takes what works so well from the 2016 game and builds on it to make it an even more enjoyable experience. It does have modern first-party PlayStation game syndrome in that it does put a larger focus on cinematics and story than usual for the series. Not that that's a bad thing, just something I noticed. Hell, this is probably one of the better multiverse stories to come out in recent memory. There isn't really too much to say with this one, but it's a load of fun. The gunplay has a bit of depth to it, and with a great and unique upgrade system that just continues the cycle of a fun experience. Insomniac continues to prove that they are the GOATs with this one, and I look forward to playing Wolverine if it ever comes out, and hopefully a new Ratchet & Clank as well. December took an interesting turn as I ended up revisiting a classic Roblox game I never had the opportunity to beat. Stick with me. The game in question is Pokemon Brick Bronze. The game isn't officially back, so I won't leak how to play it, but if you grew up on this game and want to play it again, just know it is out there. This is the first year we haven't had a new Pokemon game in the last 10 years, so when my inevitable Pokemon phase came around, this served as the perfect storm for a great nostalgic trip and another fun-filled journey into the world of Pokemon. The 8th gym had to be remade, and the Pokemon League was never finished before the game got taken down initially, so the new devs had to make the new areas themselves, which ended up looking awfully empty, and the Nothing Burger attempts at dialogue didn't help the end of the game feeling any less empty. But that being said, Pokemon Brick Bronze is a game I will always look back fondly upon while we looked forward to Legend ZA releasing next year. Closing out 2024, I finally beat Fire Emblem Echoes Shadows of Valentia. This is a game I started over a year and a half ago, and between the time I started and finished this game, a whole different Fire Emblem game came out that I beat. Really had my priorities straight with that one. Echoes is a great game though. Thing is, it has a couple of annoying quirks that dragged out my playthrough from 2022 all the way to 2024. Such as, but not limited to, punishing you for moving on the world map. This is genuinely one of the most baffling game design decisions I've ever seen. The game basically makes you suck it up and deal with it though, so I got over it, kinda. The characters are pretty hit or miss. Not like engaged levels of miss, quite a bit better than that, but still misses. The story is decent, nothing particularly special, but it has some nice twists thrown in there. The gameplay, however, is a bit more polarizing. They have some solid enhancements like the turn wheel and combat arts and magic costing health, so we don't have to deal with weapon durability or tomes. But there's also some pretty bad map design that has frustrated me on several occasions. Being a remake of Gaiden, this game saw the return of the dungeons in an all-new reimagined way. They made them in 3D, which is pretty cool on paper, but the clunky controls didn't make these sections a very exciting one. Overall, I enjoyed my time with Fire Emblem Echoes. It may have taken me way too long to beat, but I couldn't think of a better way to wrap this year up filled with many other games that took me too long to beat. 2024 was another great year in terms of the games that I beat. It's been another year I haven't actually played much from this year, but the ones I did play were definitely worth the while. This year saw me tying up loose ends from the past few years, and while there's still a couple games I started long ago that I still haven't beaten, I knocked out the vast majority of them this year. Of the 16 games I beat this year, my average rating was an 8.43 out of 10, the exact same score as last year. Let's fucking go. Comment down below what your favorite games you beat this year were, and if you enjoyed, it would be great if you could subscribe to the channel. 2025 is going to be a big year for the channel, and I'm committing myself to doing far more consistent uploads. But on that note, thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next year.